At bottom, optimism is the unwarranted self-praise of the real author of the world, namely, of the will to live, which complacently mirrors itself in its work. Accordingly, optimism is not only a false but also a pernicious doctrine, for it presents life as a desirable state, and humanity's happiness as its aim and object. Starting from this, everyone then believes that they have the most legitimate claim to happiness and enjoyment. If, as usually happens, these do not fall to their lot, they believe that they suffer an injustice. In fact, that they miss the whole point of existence. Whereas it is far more correct to regard work, privation, misery, and suffering, crowned by death, as the aim and object of our life, as is done by Brahmanism and Buddhism, and also by genuine Christianity, since it is these that lead to the denial of the will to live. In the New Testament, the world is presented as a vale of tears, life as a process of purification, and the symbol of Christianity is an instrument of torture. Therefore, when Leibniz, Shaftesbury, Bolingbroke, and Pope appeared with optimism, the general offense caused by it was due mainly to the fact that optimism is irreconcilable with Christianity. This is stated and explained by Voltaire in the preface to his excellent poem, The Disaster in Lisbon. This great individual, whom I so gladly commend in the face of the slanders of mercenary German ink-slingers, is placed decidedly higher than Rousseau by the insight to which he attained in three respects, and which testifies to the greater depth of his thinking. 1. Insight into the preponderating magnitude of the evil and misery of existence with which one is deeply penetrated. 2. Insight into the strict necessitation of the acts of the will. 3. Insight into the truth of Locke's principle that what thinks may possibly also be material. Rousseau, on the other hand, disputes all this by declamations in his Profession of Faith of a Savoyard Vicar, the superficial philosophy of a Protestant pastor. In this very spirit, he also attacks, in the interest of optimism, Voltaire's fine poem just mentioned. This he does with distorted, shallow, and logically false reasoning in his long letter to Voltaire of 18 August 1756, which was devoted simply to this purpose. Indeed, the fundamental characteristic and first false step of Rousseau's whole philosophy is that he puts in the place of the Christian doctrine of original sin and of the original depravity of the human race, of original goodness and unlimited perfectibility thereof, which had been led astray merely by civilization and its consequences. And on this, he then establishes his optimism and humanism. Just as in Candide, Voltaire in his facetious manner wages war on optimism, so has Byron done the same in his serious and tragic way, in his immortal masterpiece, Cain, and for this reason he too has been glorified by the invectives of the obscurantist Friedrich Schlegel. If in conclusion, to confirm my view, I wish to record the sayings of great minds of all ages in this sense, which is opposed to optimism, there would be no end to the citations, for almost every one of them has expressed in strong terms their knowledge of the world's misery. Hence, at the end of this chapter, a few statements of this kind may find a place, not to confirm, but merely to embellish it. First of all, let me mention here that, remote as the Greeks were from the Christian and loftily Asiatic worldview, and although they were decidedly at the standpoint of the affirmation of the will, they were nevertheless deeply affected by the wretchedness of existence. The invention of tragedy, which belongs to them, is already evidence of this. Another proof of it is given by the custom of the Thracians, first mentioned by Herodotus, chapter 4, and often referred to later of welcoming the newborn child with lamentation and recounting all the evils that face it, and, on the other hand, of burying the dead with mirth and merriment, because they have escaped from so many great sufferings. This runs as follows in a fine verse preserved for us by Plutarch, How a Youth Should Study Poetry. Pity those who are born, because they face so many evils, but the dead are to be accompanied with mirth and blessings, because they have escaped from so many sufferings. It is to be attributed not to historical relationship, but to the moral identity of the matter, that the Mexicans welcome the newborn child with the words, "My child, you are born to endure. Therefore, endure, suffer, and keep silence." And in pursuance of the same feeling, Swift, as Sir Walter Scott relates in his Life of Swift, early adopted the custom of celebrating his birthday not as a time of joy, but of sadness, and of reading on that day the passage from the Bible where Job laments and curses the day on which it was said in the house of his father that a child is born. Well known and too long to copy out is the passage in the Apology of Socrates, where Plato represents this wisest of mortals as saying that even if death deprived us of consciousness forever, it would be a wonderful gain, for a deep, dreamless sleep is to be preferred to any day, even of the happiest life. A saying of Heraclitus ran, "Life has the name of life, but in reality it is death." The fine lines of Theogenes are well known. Not to be born at all would be the best thing for a human being. Never to behold the sun's scorching rays. But if one is born, then one is to press as quickly as possible to the portals of Hades and rest there under the earth. In Oedipus at Colonus, Sophocles has the following abbreviation of this. Never to be born is far best, yet if a person lives, the next best thing is for them to return as quickly as possible from the place which they came. Euripides says, all the life of a human being is full of misery, and there is no end to affliction and despair. And Homer already said, of all that breathes and creeps on earth, there is no more wretched being than the human being. Even Pliny says, therefore, may everyone acknowledge, first of all, as a means for saving their soul, the view that, of all the good things meted out to human beings by nature, none is more valuable than a timely death. Shakespeare put the words into the mouth of old King Henry IV. O heaven, that one might read the book of fate, and see the revolution of the times, how chances mock and changes fill the cup of alteration with divers liquors. Oh, if this were seen, the happiest youth, viewing his progress through what perils past, what crosses to ensue, would shut the book and sit him down and die. Finally, Byron. Count o'er the joys thine hours have seen, count o'er thy days from anguish free, and know that whatever thou hast been, 'tis something better not to be. Balthazar Gracian also brings before our eyes the misery of our existence in the darkest colors in Criticon. At the beginning, part 1, Crisis 5, at the beginning, and Crisis 7 at the end, where he presents life in detail as a tragic farce. But no one has treated the subject so thoroughly and exhaustively as Leopardi in our day. He's entirely imbued and penetrated with it. Everywhere his theme is mockery and wretchedness of this existence. He presents it on every page of his works, yet in such a multiplicity of forms and applications, with such a wealth of imagery, that he never wearies us, but, on the contrary, has a diverting and stimulating effect.